Welcome to the Art of Succession podcast with Barrett Young. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that shape the journey of leadership transitions and business success. No matter where you find yourself along the journey, this is the podcast where you'll find the tools to make it happen.
A few months later, we decided, well, maybe we're onto something with this. Let's take it online.
It gave him a chance to taste and interact with the big boys and get that going. And that's how we lit our kids up and helped them discover their own passions. They understand you got to bring in the money, and they also develop this real respect for the customer in general.
Welcome to this bonus episode of the Art of Succession podcast. Last month, I had a conversation with Jonathan and Renee Harris. About 15 years ago, they started an online skincare company, e-commerce store. And through the process of building this company, they actually raised their 9 kids to become entrepreneurs. And this is just a conversation that we had that ended up spanning over 90 minutes. I am a parent. I have 2 teenagers, 15 and 17 years old. And the value of this conversation, I didn't want to cut anything out in order to make it fit into 2 30-minute episodes. And so we're going to release this as a bonus episode in its entirety, the full 90 minutes plus. Watching my kids as late teens struggle with what they want to do when they grow up, figuring it all out by the time they're 18, whether they have to go to college or where their skills are going to align with the workforce. Just as a dad, this was a very comforting message for me and also encouraging. And so I wanted to release it to our listeners in its entirety. It's a little bit out of the ordinary just because they have not transferred the business yet. There isn't real succession here, but I want you to enjoy this episode. I want you to learn as much from it as I did, to see that the true succession of a family business is the training that happens within the family business. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. We'll be back to our normal 2 episodes per month in August, but enjoy this bonus episode and I'll see you on the next one. Jonathan, Renee, welcome to the Art of Succession.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barrett.
I want to start off our discussion, like what's motivating you? What do you really want our guests to benefit from this discussion today?
I think the one thing we want is to have other parents realize that the little small business that they may be in at this point can really change the future of their children. And so for us, we made a midlife change from being specifically an employee of a large corporation. And I was treated well, but it didn't match my original long-term plans. And it was like a lot of people will say they'll hit that, they're 40, 45, and they realize, oh my goodness, I spent my whole life in a career I wasn't really wanting to be in. And life sort of happened. And so we thought, you know what, we want to change the direction for our own children. And so we used our learning our business midlife, right? So we cashed out a 401k. We took some massive lifestyle changes to do that. And so we decided, you know what, we don't want our children to have to go through that kind of life change to achieve those goals. So we decided just to use our business as a way for our teens to figure out the entrepreneurial lifestyle. So we were hoping originally, in fact, Renee, we're talking about, we're thinking, oh, we're going to grow this business so fast, it'll be a big empire. Well, that hasn't happened exactly the way we wanted. And that's okay. I mean, part of that is we realized we started late in life. We had no business background. We had no relatives that were in that world. We're very much of an employee mindset. And so we did that massive switch, and we decided with our kids, we're going to eliminate that kind of thinking. And I think we were successful at that. So that's how we decided to use our business to change their future. And all of them are, I think, starting off much stronger than we did at their age.
Yeah, without a college degree, which is kind of nice and handy, especially in today's world, if that is not a direction that the teen is going to go into. Or I think I would want the listeners to know that you have so much more under your roof than you realize, with your kids and their abilities, and they don't have to copy exactly what you do. So especially for those family businesses, if they're going to transfer the business on to a younger person, they don't have to do exactly the same things you did. And there's so many skill sets they can learn, whether or not they take over the business or start their own, which is kind of what happened in a lot of our kids' cases that they did start their own businesses. But there's a lot they can do while they're still under your roof.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think this will be a beneficial conversation because, as you just both pointed out, it's not all or nothing. It's not either you take over the exact family business or you become an employee. there's a benefit that they're gaining just from watching you and going along in this process that they'll carry into adulthood. So awesome. So let's get into the founding of it. So Renee, I presume that you were at home raising the kids and looking for something on the side to start bringing in some extra income.
We had homeschooled the kids from the beginning. So at that time, which it's been about 16 years now, 17 years, we had 7 kids at home, and my oldest were 10 and 8. And it wasn't really like I was trying to start a business. It was more of a, hey, there's a little farmer's market starting up in our town and they're looking for vendors. Let's figure out what we could sell. Maybe we have an idea. And at the time I was just, making bread, making yogurt, just things like that, just that are my homemaking skills at work. And I thought at first, well, I can make bread and sell that. Thankfully, I didn't go that direction because that's a lot more complicated with food, especially. But I had a product something I was making that was helping my own skin issues out. And that's having super dry, cracked skin. I get my knuckles, my heels. And I had started to make this, what's called a lotion bar. And it was easy to make. I had my 2 sons come out with me, and we set up tables, and I had to figure out the whole research and development, part of how do you approach people? How do you explain things to people, especially something that they've never seen before? And so that was just an experience of a few months of just learning how to do that. And the kids were helpful and involved. And I kind of let them just use our products to go trade with the other vendors so that they came home with something other than cash, because it wasn't making a killing on the money part. But after that, a few months later, we decided, well, maybe we're onto something with this. Let's take it online. And Jonathan has tech skills. So we built a website. We figured out how to attract people to the website, do the marketing. And then I think within about a year and a half or 2 years, it was our full-time income after that.
You started the farmer's market around 2007, 2008.
Yeah, well, actually, let me make it 2009, because it was more of before that. It was just testing it and seeing how it worked for us. So by the time we actually started the farmer's market, that was 2009. And then by the end of the year of 2009, we were starting to sell it online. And then by 2010, the end of 2010, Jonathan was able to end where he was at. And then we took it from there to make it our full-time income.
Okay. So, e-commerce is still pretty new at the time,
yeah.
2009.
Oh, we were at the library a lot. We didn't have access. That's why it's easier to tell people, you have so much available now. It's, if anything, too much. You have to make choices. Back then it was, how do we figure this whole thing out? Who do we follow? Who knows what they're doing that we can follow and tap into? So yeah, there are too many choices now, but at least it's easy and affordable.
It was just the beginning of the blog revolution. The mom bloggers were coming online. That was very, very new. So we were riding that wave. We didn't do the blogging to sell, but we sold our product through particular bloggers. And that was a good start for us. It changed over the years, but that's when we got on board with that. And so we were part of that ecosystem in the beginning.
Okay. So, you were probably having to hard code the web page, the shopping cart, everything at that
No.
They had resources by then. Now you could type PayPal
plugin or something like that.
Yeah, back then you could have done WordPress. I think even Squarespace was already available back then. I don't know if that was the
Etsy
very first
or anything.
No.
But you know what though? But with the point that you're making there, what is interesting is that's part of the reason why it worked really well for our teens to be able to use our business to find their own sort of unique passion and skills. So even that example that later on, though, one of our teens is now a big software developer, lead software developer, loves his job and his career, but he started with us, not so much developing as just troubleshooting all those little things.
I would have to, have him come and figure it out. And I think actually that was an amazing skill that I think all teens should have, and we're seeing ours develop, is if you can troubleshoot. You don't have, the parents don't have to have all the answers, but if the kids learn how to find the answers, which is, I think it's becoming more common now, that if there's something they want or they need to research, they can go troubleshoot and figure it out. YouTube tutorials alone can solve so many problems for people. So yeah, they got really good at that.
Yeah, and that's when we realized at first it wasn't 100. There was some intentionality in the beginning when we started involving our teens. So by the time we went full time with this, because I left a corporate job, we saw the layoffs coming. There would have been a way to stay in that world, but then that would have involved us leaving this area, going to the cities in another state, which we did not want to do. And so we made that choice. So that's why we started doing things with a lot more intentionality. And one of them, as we started noticing our kids could actually help us, we realized, say, wait a second, it has nothing really to do with whether or not our kids will take our business over, but rather it was a chance for them to get a real taste of what it's like to apply their interest in the real world and get that feedback. So in the family environment, it was relatively safe, but it was real. So when we're having a problem loading something up, or we don't know where our backup is, when you have a team that's really into that, we'll tell them, go research it. We give them enough money to buy the tools in that environment, right? It had nothing to do with our specific product per se, but it gave him a chance to taste and interact with the big boys, what it is, and get that going. And that's how we lit our kids up and help them discover their own passions.
I mean, you're obviously intentional about this, because I know just from experience doing something at a farmer's market, it's easy to involve cute kids at the table and handing out samples and stuff like that. You bring it home and you go online. It's so easy to do that work after everybody's in bed and just like, I've got to get this done and stay out of the way. You're making things slower. So, I mean, troubleshooting, are you talking things like the website selling stuff that we don't have in inventory, or matching up?
It's more
shipping
actual something
labels
is
and stuff.
Yeah, or it's more like shipping labels, or things aren't loading properly, or there's always some issue with a plugin of some kind that's not working, and you call their developers up and everybody's blaming each other, and you have your son goes in there, looks at the code, finds the problem right away. That's when we knew he had a real knack at this, because he could find the problems that the developers weren't seeing. And
usually go to my son first. He would identify the problem, so that when I did go to the chat on the software, I would say, well, maybe you want to look at this. I sound smart that way. That's really how son. And that's usually how they can identify it if it's not obvious or fast enough. So that's just one example. Another one would be, especially when we started this, and my oldest, who was 10, and by then he was around 11 and 12, he was interested in photography, and I needed product shots, but I didn't want to. And we are really at that time watching every single dime, so that we're not just spending a lot of money on coaches and so on, when we need to just pay the bills. And so he was into photography, and I needed product shots for the products. So we had him investigate the best way to do that.
Yeah, we sent him to a local camera store.
I said, go find out we'll buy the light box. But when we're done with the light box, and after you've taken the product shots and you've gotten really good at it, we'll let you use it to go sell your stuff on eBay if you want. Get your Legos out. You can take the product shots and go sell it on eBay. So they would do stuff like that too. So they began to notice that the more work they did and the better they got at it, they were bringing value to somebody else where they can actually charge for it. So that was just the whole, starting that really young at 12 is really valuable, because they start to get good at something. And then when we see that, and we need it, not that we're just wasting our time having them do something that they're just so and we're never going to use it, but we would just go through reiterations of, okay, I need this a little bit better. I need this to look like this. And then they can go back and get better at it until it's something we can use. But then they become valuable to more people too. They get known for that thing that they love doing. And then other people say, oh, hey, I'll hire your kid to go do this for me too. So it just starts to take off for each of the kids but they do have to put the work into getting really good at their interest.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like pretty early on that your kids were starting and running their own businesses, selling those services to other people too.
Yeah. All very different. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me just a little bit about identifying those skills within your kids and making sure that they're treated, I don't know, fairly or appropriately, or because I know, my daughter started working, and my son, who's 2 years younger than her, was like, that's not fair. Why can't I do that job and get paid the same kind of thing? So yeah, just talk to me about that a little bit there in the early days.
Yeah, I think what you're doing, and this is why we actually called, it was a series of, I started blogging about how to do this because I thought, and it wasn't an original idea to blog about it. It was just like, if I don't write this down, I'm going to forget how it worked. And so some things, I tried to get the kids involved and to develop their talents, marketable talents. That was our goal. And some things didn't work as well, and some things worked really well. And so over time, we call that parent their passion, because at some point when your children are going to leave home, they're going to eventually figure out what they do and don't like. But you've lost that window of opportunity where they could get enough momentum with something that they really like. So a lot of times, people think, I don't know, I want to become a professional rodeo guy, right? But you didn't grow up in that environment. Well, when you're 18 and you haven't started, that's not going to happen. Most likely
Right.
not.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is you need enough marketable skills in that field that your teen really wants to go into. Like, they may not know what it is, but they have a general idea, and you discover that over time. But you need to get them to that critical level where they can pay, a bed with other roommates and still keep going. If not, they're going to wind up, as they should. If they can't do that, they're going to have to wind up, back at McDonald's doing a double shift. But that means now, yes, they're putting food on the table, but they're having to give up that momentum. So you don't want them to lose that momentum. You want to get them to that point when they're leaving home, they're gonna have enough of their own genuine earned income, which means they're already in that culture that they're trying to get into. They know people, they know the basic tools. They're already valuable to that network of people, and that's what we're trying to do. So when you have a kid like our guy who became our son who became a software developer, we noticed that he had a very logical mind. That was just his personality bent, and he was spending way too much time playing on Minecraft and games, which a lot of parents are aware of. So we said, hey, if you're going to keep doing as much Minecraft, why don't you bring value to that community? So we brainstormed a bit, and he says, well, I could start writing and modifying the plugins. Minecraft allows you to do that. And that's what he did. He actually became popular writing these little plug-in games and inviting his friends for these online parties. And then as he got into that, he got recruited by, at that time, it was a private business that owned several Minecraft servers, and their biggest concern was keeping it family friendly, right? So the parents didn't pull the plug and pulled their subscription. So he got involved helping a programming team come up with ideas on how to make sure people weren't logging in with false identities and so forth. And from there, he got more and more into programming, and he really got hooked. So eventually that initial interest of Minecraft kind of went by the wayside. And so we've learned to encourage parents and ourselves that you can start with something that may not seem to have much of a future in itself, but it's often the gateway to get to that next level, that true thing that you really want to. So we noticed as a parent, he has a super logical mind. He's the kind of guy that will just keep going, never gets tired. He loves solving puzzles. And so we said we encourage him in that area. And we did that for each of our kids. So it's not like you're just throwing them out to the sharks and say, hey, good luck. Here's an axe. Maybe you'll become a lumber. We don't know. We'll pick you up in a couple of days. That's not how it works. You're noticing your kids, you're having conversations, and you look in your environment. And in the beginning, especially if they're young, your family business is one of the best places, because there's always some aspect of your business that you could get involved in. Anything from, numbers, running numbers, crunching numbers, to hardware, to our daughter who became a graphic artist. She did some of our logos. They're hilarious. So, like, I think it was it a goat?
Some of the social media.
Yeah, social media.
We would actually put it on our products, some of her artwork on the boxes that our soap came in. And so people also see, oh, it's a family business, and her art was really good, and, done by Noelle Harris and so on.
Yeah. So there's always a gateway in your family business. And I think obviously in this show, right, we're going to have a lot of people who are in the middle of that. And I think we have seen mistakes with friends who do have businesses, but they don't involve their kids. So they kind of, unfortunately, I view it as pushing their kids out into activities that have nothing to do. There's no advantage. They might as well not have been born in a family that is entrepreneurial, right? They're just going down the same path as everybody. And so when they leave home, it's like as if they never grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And I feel like that's a waste, when really their specific unique talents could get a chance to go real time if you think creatively inside of your business, what could they do?
And the other benefit as parents too, especially entrepreneurial, is you have connections. So the one son who is a software developer, he immediately started to work for a friend of mine whose husband was a WordPress blogger expert, but needed to, he actually had a job opening. And I thought, well, I don't know, Nicholas is kind of young. I think he was only 16 or 17, maybe 17 at the time. And they were looking
I
for,
think it was 16 actually.
and they were looking for a well-experienced adult. But he tried out for it anyway, and by then he had already been doing help for other mom bloggers who were my connections because he could fix their things. So once my friends knew, oh, your son fixed that thing on your website, can he do mine too? And then all of a sudden the word gets around, so they know, okay, well, this kid, he's really good and he's cheaper than having to hire someone $100 an hour. So it just starts to grow, and then all that experience. The other big thing that we have our kids do is blog about their progress. So they keep a blog, or in some cases it's also an Instagram account, a YouTube, something that's going to showcase their work as they grow. Because even the same kid, in his current position, someone had done a little bit of a background check on him and saw that he had published a Kindle book way back years ago on Minecraft. And so they said, hey, I saw, is this you? and then found his blog from when he was like 14 years old. So they already saw his track record and noticed that, okay, he's a real thing. He hasn't just come right out of college without the experience, but just head knowledge, but that he's actually been in it, doing it. So, and with the kids, it's also different. Each one has different skill set. Like we said, the graphic artist, she happens to be the twin to the coder guy. And she's very, very different. And it's not like we used a ton of her skill sets in the business, but if there was an opportunity to do that, we would have her do that. And for us, using social media was part of the business that we had to learn. And so we have a video editor, we have a podcast editor, and they learned that as well because they helped us out. So just those little micro parts of the business that can be outsourced to your kids, it's a perfect environment for them to learn it and kind of meet our standards and then get noticed and seen. And then that helps to make them take off.
And we have lots of financial conversations along the way, right? So, and this is part of the larger environment. Every family, there's certain times of the year when you want to buy them special things that they've been wanting. But a lot of times we'll say, hey, when we're done with this campaign, right? We have seasons where we have more cash coming in and say, okay, when we're done with this campaign, all hands on deck, we got to push through. There'll be a late evening where everybody's putting stickers on the envelopes, right? So we use that to have those conversations, and they've assimilated it so much that I think we are surprised because they started off early with that mindset. We did not. So on our side, we have to be very intentional, as mom and dad, to think that way. They think like that instinctively. So there's none of, they understand you got to bring in the money. And they also develop this kind of real respect for the customer in general, where they understand where money comes from and how work generates income and service to other people.
And the highs and the lows.
The highs and the lows. And I'd say that is been one of the most amazing side benefits is they're far bigger risk takers, but not reckless. Mm-hmm. Like they know how to take risk. And if it doesn't quite work out, they also know how to bounce back real quick. So they're simultaneously frugal, where they're not afraid to pile up their money, but then take a risk, buying machinery they need to, they've done the research, but making that move. So they're not paralyzed by decision making. And I think that starts really young, understanding how money comes and goes out of a small business.
I have so many questions, so many directions to take this. You guys have standards for your kids. I can tell. Jonathan, you said a lot of parents don't involve their kids at all. And then on the other side, you've got small businesses that are like, pay your kids to do, take out the trash or something like that just to avoid taxes. And you're effectively giving them jobs with no real responsibility or any real work involved. How do you guys hold your kids to a standard when it's already hard enough raising kids, raising teenagers, to then say, I love you, you're my son, but this needs to be fixed. This is wrong, and I'm not going to pay you for that until you fix it. I share stories or talk to me about negotiating and navigating that.
Well, in the example, just this is kind of how just to go back to the software developer kid. When he first started off, we noticed, like I said, he not only was he into gaming, but we also noticed his very logical mind as compared to the other siblings. It was easy to compare. It's like, okay, I'm surprised he can stay at something long enough to sit through a puzzle, a logical puzzle. So I was thinking, okay, I'd like to see him be productive. We use that language. We use that conversation a lot. What kind of value can you bring to other people? We actually use that language every day, especially when they're older teens. It's like, what kind of value can you bring to people using what you love to do, right? So it's not a contradiction. It's more you like what you're doing, but how can we pivot a little bit so other people can benefit from that? So when we went to, in that example, when he was very young doing the plugins, there's very simple. In fact, it's not even really called coding, some kind of scripting, I think, but it gets you introduced to that. What in the beginning he wasn't doing it, and I said, "Well, we're going to have to cut off Minecraft. We'll try again tomorrow. How much time have you put in today?" So what we would actually have conversations, right? Wasn't there a time period too? We had talent time set aside literally during the day, 1 to 2 hours, where you're supposed to be working on your talent. You had a lot of freedom, but you had to be doing something about it. And they loved that. They relished that. So we're tapping into sort of their deep desires, but we're also not afraid to cut back on their, if it's pure consumption, right? So if you're not coding, doing real coding, you're not playing Minecraft, right? And we'll try again tomorrow. So it's kind of a conversation. I believe in you, right? So if you saw a kid, one of your kids, let's say, was very much more kinetic, much more athletic than everybody else and spending a lot of time, in the sport, but he wasn't training to go to the next level or whatever, you'd start saying, hey, well, we're going to have to start cutting back me driving you on the weekends to these events unless you're really going to put in the time to train, because it's kind of a waste of time for us, waste of time for you. And we're, as parents, just doing all the work while you're lounging around, right? So we're not afraid to believe in them enough that we'll cut back on some of their consumption habits until they bring up their productivity. But it's not really a problem, because as soon as they get hooked onto I think who they really are, once they get hooked, it's not an issue. So I think our biggest issue, to be honest, was a lot of it was getting the kids to go to bed on time, because I'd come around, the lights are still on, because they're in so deep of whatever it is they're doing. And we had one kid started off, I'm going to jump halfway through his time, he kept pivoting, but he was selling blades online and on Instagram. This is more than a decade ago, and he was making money off this stuff. He learned along the way that what he wanted to do, knives, real knives, before he got into that. And he was trying at first to sell the very beautiful knives, one that make people go ooh and ah. But in actuality, unless you're a famous person, you can't really sell those. They're too expensive to make. And then the collectors want even a bigger name. So he eventually learned he made the other ones for himself, for his own pleasure. But in order to make money, he made smaller knives, which were very utility oriented, but people want high performance. So he learned, and that later paid on for him in his career, how to pivot, still doing what he loved, but also adapting to what the customers wanted, the designs and so forth. And so we just, when you, in the beginning, it's more of an issue if they don't have that grit and fortitude to push through in order to adapt their skill to what other people want. So sometimes, you need to change the color. We've had to learn that in our own business, where at one time we had this idea how we're going to package our product, and our customers soundly rejected it. I think we're a little bit hurt because we thought it was brilliant. They did not like it. And so we switched over to more of a tin product. That wasn't our original intention, but it's still we're getting our product out. And so we've learned to have those conversations with our kids every other day, where yes, you're doing great, but maybe you need to modify it. What could you do? Like, we don't know the answer. What could you do? Make it shorter, bigger, faster, smaller increments. And that's why you don't get that resistance, because you're not doing this. You're not putting your kid on, kids playing a guitar. Okay, tomorrow we're going to put you at a big concert, 10,000 people, or they're going to fail. You know that. They're going to fail, and then they'll get crushed. But you're doing instead small, sort of like mini tests of what they're able to do, but you're also encouraging them to keep going. If it's just a matter of simple discouragement, you're there as a parent to help them. If you see that it's way beyond their capabilities or they actually don't like it, it was a pure fantasy, then you can help them to pivot out of that.
And I think of, from your original question on the kids, if you do it in terms of not paying them by the hour necessarily, because in their minds they're thinking, okay, I just have to do this and I'm done and then I get paid. It does help to pay more like by the week or by something that's by the project or something that is easier for you to switch later if you need to. And the other part is to start them early, and like with our kids, because they're not always really, really good at it, or they might have an attitude about it. So you have to switch from, are you a boss or are you a parent now? And you're always, if you see that also as you're teaching them along the way too, because it is a hard, what you were describing is it can be hard to navigate. I think, especially as they get older, they kind of know what they're worth. And sometimes even with our kids now, some of the ones that are out of the house, we can't even afford them to pay them because they know they can get more from somebody else. And so you have to kind of keep talking in terms of this is a family. You're going to help each other out. We helped you out. You help us out. So a lot of it is just this constant conversation about the family economy too. So we all kind of pitch in and help each other out. But again, that's just starting sooner. And in the beginning, we paid with Doritos or Game Time. It wasn't always cash. And for them they also have to realize they're not that great at something. Sometimes they think they are, and they're not quite ready to receive a certain amount of money for what they're doing. And so there's that careful way of having to nurture that, of like, you need to get better at this, and then you can earn something for it. So it's not an easy answer. I just feel like it's something that if it becomes your culture in the family, then that seems to grow on them too.
I mean, you're getting kicked in the teeth by customers also as the owners of this business, and telling your kids, well, it's not good enough. You need to do better and get better client, customer response and everything. How do you navigate things like that where your customers just completely reject an experiment that you tried while you're also demonstrating to them, like, I've got to hold this together because they're watching me? How do you do things like that? Because it's so hard to come home and not bring that with you.
Right.
But then know how much to show them and how much I'm a real person too. And I suffer from some of these rejections too.
I think sometimes just sharing the good and the bad with the kids, like just the actual emails. And I mean, if it's something that the kid did with the business that affected the customer's reaction, then definitely they have to be in the know on that. But I think you're talking just in general, your two lives of business and parenting. I mean, I had a rough day yesterday and my girls got to see it. So it's part of that. And then I come back and say, you know what, this is all part of business. And we have to like figure out the lesson we're going to learn. And then let's go figure out how to make it a better day, or just if anything, I feel like it helps. You can't avoid that. It's better that they see that. I think if we didn't allow the kids to see the good, we have to say the good too, because we really want our kids to go down this path. So if they only hear the complaints, and we've seen some second generation entrepreneurs where they're like, well, I don't want to do what my parents did. It was a horrible upbringing. I don't want to impose that on my kids. That means you've only talked about the bad. And then that means you probably really, you didn't enjoy it, or you just talked about the bad side and you didn't talk about the successes. And for us, I mean, we definitely have our seasons. Like, we work really hard in October, November. Like, we have to give up some things that we would rather not have to give up, but that's our busiest season. And then as soon as mid-December comes around, we get to totally celebrate. And even during the heavy, hard times, we're just bringing home fun stuff to eat, or have little celebrations, or, okay, we're going to just quit and have a movie night, or just any kind of way to celebrate the successes. You do that. And I will let my kids know. Usually I let them overhear me talking to Jonathan, like, oh, this happened, because you never know if they're paying attention, but often they are. So I will share an experience of what I had to deal with a customer. And then another time it might be a completely positive one. And if I sit them down and they're a late teenager and I'm telling them, oh, this customer said this, they're kind of looking at me like they could care less. But if I'm telling Jonathan and they're in the room, they get to,
they're spying.
They hear it.
Yeah.
And we found if you whisper, they start listening.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I lost my question on that. How do you deal with a kid? I'm sure out of 9 kids, and some of them were born into this at this point. How do you deal with a kid that's just like, this isn't my path? How do you deal with, I mean,
When you mean by this isn't, so let me
they
push
don't
back
want to
on that
do it.
question.
They don't. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When you're saying this is not my path, what do you think is going through their mind when they're saying that? Typically when a person would say that, a teen would say that. Why? I mean, what is that path in their mind?
I don't know if it's comparison with their older siblings or higher expectation, or they're just not interested in this. They just want to do Minecraft, or
okay, well, I actually have a short answer to that. Okay, because I just want, because there's 2 things here. One, I hear other parents say they're worried about that path, meaning their specific path, right? So, you know, you're a baker, I'm making this up here, and it's a family business, let's say. So if you're saying that path, typically when parents are saying that, not teens, but if parents are saying, oh, my kid doesn't want to go down that path, they mean literally, I don't know if my kid wants to become a baker. That's not what we're talking about here. So where they're finding their own path, whether it be baker, programmer, artist, musician, engineer, software developer, they're finding their own path, not our path, their path, but they're using our business to get down their path faster. So that's what we're turning on. Now, if a teen is saying that, so what I'm hearing the other side of the question, if a teenager is saying that and they're saying, I just want to, do Minecraft. Well, let me flip the question around. Could that teenager say, hey, I don't want to study history. I don't want to study math. I'm done. I'm just going to do Minecraft. There is no person in the world would say that that's acceptable. They would just not. You're going to either take a dumbed down version of the math class, or you're going to work on your multiplication tables. But there is no option in this universe where a parent's going to say, hey, you know what? Now that you don't want to go to school anymore and you're 14, you can just stay home and do Minecraft. It's not going to happen. And what's the reason? We're saying, well, because you need a minimum level of education, right or wrong. That's how we feel about it. And you're not going to tell. You might get tools to help them. Well, it's the same thing with their talent development. My attitude and position is this talent development of finding your future is as important as your schoolwork. In other words, you don't have a choice. So you better figure out what it is that you like doing. Now, it's not like they're cast out there adrift. This kid who's playing Minecraft, I also notice him. He's got other capabilities, right? I'm paying attention to him. I'm having a conversation. I genuinely do not believe that teens don't want to do anything. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think they turn in on themselves, start gnawing on their own bones. This is where you get that teen anxiety and so, because they don't feel like they're good at anything. And I think that's what's going on. They don't feel like they're good at anything. Their hormones are going forward. They want to be noticed, and they want other people to like them for their genuine ability to bring value to people. I'm putting this in grown-up adults, but teen girls, teen boys are all the same as far as they want to be recognized, but they have different ways of doing that. And so when they're stuck just playing Minecraft and they're actually, clamping down on that, that means you haven't shown them a way to get started. And once you find that way, then it'll start awakening up. But if they're like hooked on the equivalent of sugar instead of, great steak, you're going to have to cut back on the sugar. So we're not afraid to say computer time comes off or whatever it is you're doing. That's not acceptable. But we are lenient in terms of them enjoying some of the just pure pleasure of their interest, as far as that's concerned. So we're not monsters. We're just saying, hey, if you really like, racing cars, in this area, there's a lot of people like drag racing. We're not in that culture, but I know there are. If you like racing it, that's fine, but you're going to have to find a way to bring value to other people, maybe repairing their engines, right? Wouldn't that be awesome combination? We're not just going to fuel the cost of you drag racing with all the costs that come with it without you also producing something of value in that world. So that's kind of how we deal with that.
I gotcha. So, I mean, that does help with the comparison, because it's easy for a kid to look at their sister and say, oh, I can't draw like that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
prefer
Right.
I prefer to read. You're saying it's your job as a parent to say, there's a way to read that brings value to other people, and you need to explore that hobby or that interest that you have, but it has to grow you into an adult that's productive, that's adding to society, is what you're saying here.
Yeah,
Not just
absolutely.
holding them all to, well, your oldest brother was a coder and he was awesome at this stage in our business, and you all need to be doing, you all need to learn
Yeah.
how to code, you all need to learn how to draw, you all need to learn how to take photographs. You're
Right. And
specifically tailoring that.
with our kids, some of them had very little participation in the business at all. And then others had a lot more participation. And it really depended on what their interest and skill set was. So if we had an opportunity for them to get better at something and they could quickly showcase it because we could use it, then we would. Like my youngest, who is, I mean, she's 9. She loves, I have an app on my phone called InShot where you can just piece together all these different videos and photos and add sound effects and put words and everything. So I actually had her put something together for me. I said, okay, you're going to come with me in this video. It's the product that we have that also works well for kids. She and I were in the video and I was the one talking, but she was being her cute little self. And then I just put a couple different videos and I said, okay, make this short. And she actually pieced it together. She put music to, I mean, it shows it was done by a kid. It's not a professional, but it was so well done. And she did it a lot faster than I could have. I told her, I'm going to use this. Actually, I'm going to post this on my Facebook because it was good enough for me to actually post something like that. But even that just tiny example of somebody who is, she loves storytelling, acting, video taking, that kind of stuff. She's just this, none of our other kids have been quite the same in that way. And so just giving that little opportunity to put herself out there was worth it for her because now she's going to grow up being used to doing that. And yeah, they don't all have, they don't
In
always.
that example, if we don't know what direction it's going to go,
Mhm.
but you can imagine, right? What is it? A lot of teen girls have, and teen boys too, but teen girls in particular, they're afraid of showing themselves because it becomes very self-aware of their looks in their teens. Well, what happens if you have a kid who's early on used to showing themselves on video appropriately, right? Appropriately with in that context, in the parent's business, you're teaching them boundaries. You're teaching them what you can and can't talk about, but you're also encouraging them. So you realize if you were to keep going down this path, by the time that child is a teenager, they're not going to have the same hangups that you would think an average teenager would, because they understand the boundaries of what you can and can't do and how to get positive feedback from people. And in this case, she's the reason why Renee felt comfortable doing this with our 9-year-old is because she loves being the center of attention. She loves showing herself. We understood that. So that's why we didn't do it with our other kids.
Yeah.
But we understood that with her. So we gave her an opportunity. But by us doing that, we're not like sealing her fate that she's going to be a spokesperson for our business in the future. We don't really care one way or the other as far as that is concerned. But we do care that she gets a chance to sort of express herself in a way that brings value to other people.
And in her free time, she's already taking my phone and setting up her little stuffed animals and making these little stories. So I came into it saying, oh, she has a little skill. She knows how to use this app. She knows how to set up her little animals and then piece all these different videos and sound effects together. Why not just have her do it for me and see what she comes up with? And I didn't even have to use it. I didn't pay her. I was not about to say, hey, I need you to do this job. It was more like, try this out. I want to see what you can do because you're getting good at this. And then from that, it was something I could use. But it wasn't like I had to stop everything and go teach her. It was something that she was already interested in that. So I could hijack that into something that I wanted to do. And we put on a workshop a couple of days ago, and we had a mom in there who all of her girls are into dance. Like they do ballet, they do swing, jazz. It's like their family culture. I think they only have girls. Is all about going to all of these events to do dance. So they've already invested, I'm sure, a lot of money. If it's dance, I'm sure it's a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of practice. And so she was there because, well, what's that going to look like in the future? They've become very good at dancing, but now what? Is that going to be what they do full time, or is this a hobby? And Jonathan got them to talk about all the different other interests that they have. Like, we have a whole checklist of all the different kinds of other interests, not just dance, but what else do you have? And one of them was baking. So by the time we were done talking, we were able to come up with, okay, you need to bring value to your dance club. So how can you do that? Well, there's probably a big deal about having healthy snacks when they're out there dancing. It's not going to spill and leave a mess on their clothes. And you want to make sure that they eat before they go perform. So what's the ideal kind? So if it were our daughter, we would say, okay, you're going to do some research on this. It's got to be healthy. All these, and maybe brainstorm that with them. So what kind of, you can't do ice cream, obviously it's going to melt. So you can't have that pre-done. So what kind of foods can you have that could be snacks that everybody would love too, but would also please the moms because it's healthy. It's not just sugar. It's not messy. And then it's amazing what a teenager can come up with when it's something that they already love. Well, they already love to do, baking or be in the kitchen, and they love to dance. Is there a way to merge those two? And then you bring in, okay, this is important to us. We're already spending a lot of time and money doing these dance competitions. So now can we actually bring value to the dance, events and so on?
I know there are parents probably listening who their kids are already too late. They're already grown up, or they're, late teens and hard to connect and hard to have serious conversations. Is it too late? How do you get started? What are some words of encouragement or recommendations, or
are you talking about if they're still young teens, or are you talking about when they're getting closer to graduating?
18 or
16 to 18, is it too late? Just throw them out there. And
well, it is true that if there hasn't been any connection with their sort of, true skills is I don't want to say that, because skills are learned. But what I'm talking about, if they don't have a set of skills that match sort of their true personality, it's going to be a problem later on, right? So, people joke about, high school days were the best days ever. Well, the reason for that is because they were involved in developing very, very, advanced skills in an area that as soon as they leave high school, no one will want, right? So that's the reality. Everybody understands. Now, if you understand that, then you can treat it like a hobby and not take it too serious and develop stuff on the side. A lot of times people lose sight of that. So they go into sort of doom loop. I like playing the guitar. I'm doomed to become a starving artist. No, that's not the way to think about it. What you have to think of is, yes, I enjoy the guitar, but there's a lot of other things that go with it. And there's probably what appears to be a side skill related to it that might actually be better suited for what you want to do long term in terms of your personality and other resources. So what I would say is, when you're 16, 17, 18, you're going to pivot outward. Maybe not the family is the way to look at now, because you are competing against the possibility of making money at a fast food place, let's say, versus working on a skill that you really love because it's involved in the world you really want to be in. So how are you going to reconcile those two? So you have to really put your thinking hat. One advantage you have when you're that age, though, is you can get in your car and you can drive across town. And, in the beginning, maybe even volunteer. So what I really want to have people think about is, yes, McDonald's might pay more. In our area, it's In-N-Out Burger. Yes, they might pay more per hour. And if you're starving and you have no other option, then do that, of course. But if you could have another skill and maybe even paid less, but was building up, compounding your ability to make a living in the future, then do that instead, because it's not just making the cash, it's also making the connections, the social connections in that world, developing the language, understanding the tools and so forth. So at 16 or 17 or 18, you can really double down on that. But that's going to be much more on the teen owning that at that point. It is true that I think that's where as an adult, you can make a big difference. You can really have an encouraging conversation. If not, teens do panic. First, it's carefree. Everything's great. Mom's, washing your clothes. They're picking you up after soccer. Dad's going to drive you on the weekend. All that fantasy is going to disappear suddenly when they graduate. And that's why I think there's a sense of despair that a lot of young adults have. They say, well, I've spent all this time, but it makes no sense to my future. You really don't want to be in that kind of situation. But I think if you have an honest conversation that's built around who they are, then you can say, hey, what would it look like to start being able to bring value to people in that arena? And we don't know necessarily the answer. We'll tell them, I don't know. Let's see if you can find out. And they start asking questions, maybe people who are already several years ahead of them. And they say, hey, a great way to get started is this. You're really into bicycling. You love bicycling. You're part of the high school team and everything's paid for. And all of a sudden it comes to a big halt. Well, you could ask questions. It's like you find out the bicycle shop is making good money repairing, let's say, it's all the rage right now, the electric bikes. Well, it's not as glamorous up front, but you find out, what, I like repairing bikes. I'm in that world. The professionals come through, people who've got money. And so you're making money in that, let's say, shop environment, and you're staying close to the bicycles. So you could actually keep going down that road and still indulge in your desire to bicycle race. But you don't have this dichotomy. I was a big high school racer, and then all of a sudden, boom, it stops. Now I'm working double shifts at In-N-Out Burger. What happened? And you have to give up all those weekend, you fall behind and you disappear. So you have a hobby that just pretty much disappears as a dream in your childhood. And that's okay, but wouldn't it have been better? Could it have graduated to something serious? But you find a way to bring value to other people. So you got to get them out of that consumption mode and say, hey, if you want to keep going down this road, bring value to other people in that world, right? You're going to bump into people who love bicycles. You're going to be talking technique. You're going to be talking brand, quality. Isn't that just wonderful? So I think that's what gets exciting. If you get the teens hooked onto that and get that conversation going, it can really change a feeling of hopelessness and despair to excitement and passion.
If a kid absolutely says that they want to do something and you don't feel as a parent that it aligns with who they are as a person, talk to me about when you bite your tongue and just let them fail to learn that lesson.
That sometimes is the best.
The best and the hardest,
Well,
right?
Well, I mean, we don't, you don't let them take risks that are fatal, right? So
we had, when a couple of different times, I feel like, it depends, because if it's a big deal, big thing, then you obviously can't let them just, jump off a cliff. But a couple of little lessons that our kids have learned along the way is sometimes they'll want to, for example, they had something they wanted to sell to somebody, and that person happened to be in Brazil or something like that. And we had to, I'm just thinking of a time when we had to, do we let them just figure this out, that this could be a huge, and it was something they didn't get their money that they wanted for, or sometimes
we did. I remember that. And our son was being a little bit stubborn and saying, I think this is a potential scam, but because they were having success selling to everybody else, and they couldn't imagine a world where adults would try to scam. That didn't when they were young enough. Now they're
better
very
that
aware.
They do that while they're still under your roof.
Yeah.
It just depends on the age and how, we wouldn't, at the same time, if one of our sons wanted to invest in something or go down a road that we thought was just going to be a train wreck and it's too big of a risk, then we would steer them away from that, or try to extract so you have some earlier success with it. What can we do first before deciding if that's the route to go?
Also, we make them pay for their tools.
Yeah.
So we don't buy their tools. So I think we have one kid who wanted to become a voice actor. There's a fun story behind that. And right away, he wanted us to buy like a several $1,000 microphone because he saw that advertised. We're like, no way. You can use my digital recorder that I use for work. And then he realized that he was making some money actually off of voice acting for commercials, right? Nothing big, but there's a lot of little side gigs like that, very small. And he enjoyed that. But you know what he enjoyed more? Because he found out that in order to apply, they wanted him to submit audition files. And he read up, of course, that these audition files needed to be extremely clean, right? So he got into this whole editing part. He had no idea he was interested in editing. He fell completely in love with it. And that editing allowed him to buy a much more expensive microphone later on. But he earned that. And he discovered along the way, I want to make more money to buy a tool. And so he had to figure out a way to do that. And one of them was podcast editing. Back in the early days, people were already starting to pay money for this. And he was like a squirrel on this thing. He has that kind of personality, and he still does this to this day. And he loved doing that, but that wasn't his original intention, but it was connected to voice acting and so forth. So we allowed our kids to experiment a bit that way. But one of the ways to do that is to make sure that they pay for it. Now, we might in the beginning sweeten the pot and and help them get their first microphone. But after that, we're saying, okay, you want the next microphone? You bought one for $50, with your Christmas money. Fine. They want now the $1,000 one or the $500 one. And I was like, well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? What could we do to make money to get that? Meaning you make the money. Oops, sorry.
And I think another part of it is that the older kids, especially, because we had some that had a little bit of a slower movement that we thought, they should be able to get out there and make money or do something. They're taking their time. We start charging them rent if they're still home.
Well, that's when they're about ready to graduate.
Yeah, and that's more at 18. But part of it is that and if they didn't have an income and they're still at home, but they're still getting better at their craft, then they have to help us out at home, in one way or another with the business, whether or not it has to do with their interest or, since we homeschool, or we'll put them in charge of homeschooling in a particular topic that we know they're good at, or, something that's going to be valuable to the house. So, but by charging them rent early on when they are making money, then they're really motivated sometimes to just, okay, I can pay bills now, then I can live on my own. So I think. Yeah,
I forgot about that. We had one child the other kids weren't like that at all. They were very, they had high hopes. Mm-hmm. And, but one child was really worried. It's like, they couldn't understand the money side of living on their own. So they were very scared. So I think one of the exercises I had this one teen do was sort of keep a log of ask your friends, how much does it cost to rent a room in our area? We knew what it was. And she had siblings. So say, ask your brothers. It was a girl. Ask your brothers what they're paying, and then ask them how much to live on their own. And then of course the brothers say, well, but if you go out and eat every day, like we learned, it'll double or triple your price. So all the teen boys went through, as soon as they left home, they indulged in all the junk food we told them not to. And they're just like, what did they learn? And then like a year later, they realize, oh my goodness, we're getting overweight.
Then they end up eating.
They all become sort of gourmet cooks now at home, and they still might eat out. So you allow them some of that reality check, and the rent part. We noticed with the kids that were soon to graduate or had graduated that sometimes they got a little indulgent if now they're no longer doing their schoolwork or
helping around the house.
helping around the town, because somehow they feel like they've graduated beyond the normal. Necessary means. So we're washing their dishes, doing their laundry, and we're like, oh, wait a second here. Mm-hmm. This is not how life works, So we kind of charge them a lower rent than they would if they were on their own. But it was an incentive. It's like, oh my goodness, if I'm going to pay mom and dad, this amount of money, then I might as well be out there, with roommates having a good time. And they want to do that anyway.
And also, if you feel like they're not making it to the next level, like they're kind of stuck, sometimes you have to think about, well, is the location that they live in, in our area, do they need to be launched out somewhere else to a bigger city? Like we're out kind of almost in the boonies where we are. We're not near, we're 2 hours north of Sacramento, but we're not in Sacramento. So for a couple of the kids, it was actually better for them to move to Sacramento just for friendships. They notice out here, it's like even their peers just kind of are just bumbling along, not really doing anything with their lives. So we just felt they need to be outside of the area, meet people that are a lot more dynamic, doing things that they can get excited about, and just make new friends and have more opportunities. And so sometimes that's where you have to kind of steer them like, hey, you know what, there's an opportunity over here a couple hours away. In one of our son's case, my brother lived there. So he moved in with my brother and his wife for a little bit. And just so they can get out of mom and dad's, especially because we homeschool. It's been us all the time. We're their teacher, the parent, their business owner, their everything. So even getting them out from under your roof also seems to help a lot too, for them to start to grow.
And boys are very eager to do that. So it's not, it's not a bad situation. Sometimes there is anxiety to go further than they've ever gone before. But if you know who they are, and especially if you're talking about a very specific skill set, then you say, hey, it makes sense if you look. And by then they're also making friends in that field of work or that world. So they kind of know. So if you could say, hey, you know what? I have a friend, or we can drive down there and check it out. So you can do things like that as a parent, sort of clear that way to get them going. Of course, there's always social dangers of any number of things, right? So you can share that with them and talk to people, and you can clear that. But that was a good one, Renee, because I forgot about that.
And sometimes it's just the peers they're around. Maybe it's who they hang out with that's dragging them down. They need to get out of that. So we always thought, like, when we've had to steer our kids away from certain friendships, we said we have thought we have to replace it with something better then. So it's hard for kids to kind of say, what, you're not letting me go here or there, or hang out with this person, whatever. But if you can try to steer them into a new environment, that helps too.
Yeah, that's more of a delicate social.
Yeah.
Where I think also too is if you go down this road, your kids do become very advanced in a particular area of life, and sometimes that's an interesting social dynamic, because you have kids like aspiration is, I don't know what I want to do in life, and they're thinking the next 10 years I'm going to work at a fast food place. I mean, that they're not hustling at all, and your kids are like going to overdrive. So there is sometimes some social disconnect going on. You might have to help your kids say, hey, maybe you need to go to the city over here where you're going to meet a lot more people like you who have already put in the hours, and that has helped. And
or just get used to hanging out with 30. Get used to hanging out with 30 and 40-year-olds.
Well, and that is something we've always done with our kids. We haven't, because we homeschool, we could put them in different kids clubs. We got the sewing club, or they could be in the sports or whatever. But we actually, for their different interests, we would actually put them in where the adults were. And we found that to be far better for them. And the adults always love having really enthusiastic kids that want to learn from them. So they have a skill set to pass on. But it wasn't always, I mean, they had friends their own age, of course, but when it came down to really getting good at the skill set, we just found it's just better to be around people who are super serious about what they're doing. And most of the time they're adults.
About succession, you guys have made it clear, like, you don't have to follow in our footsteps with the business, the online business. But how have you walked that? But it is an option if you are interested. And maybe tell me just a little bit about your current plans with the company and where your kids are today, and just talk a little bit about that. Out of 9 kids, are there some that have wanted to? Or go ahead.
I think, well, we had mostly boys, and we sell skincare products. So right there, it's a little, but the way, we talked about the tech son, and we have another one that he was very much part of helping on the shipping and the software side. He's now, he's like a project manager, but I would call him an efficiency expert. Like, he can come into a small business and tell you exactly how to make things run smoothly and efficiently. And that's a whole journey and story in itself. But he knows a lot about our business. And I feel like if we were to suddenly pass away, he could probably put everything in place to get it going, either to sell or to continue going, partly because he worked in it really closely with me before he moved out, but also because he knows how a lot of small businesses run. So I can see him having a part in that. The first 2 hadn't really participated too much, and my daughter, who's number 3 or 4, I guess.
At that time, our business was way too small.
It was really small. It was mostly when the one I'm talking about is our 5th son. When he was a teenager about to move out, he had a big part in it. Right now, it's really the ones helping me is my 16-year-old and my 14-year-old. So my 14-year-old's a daughter, and the 16-year-old, he wouldn't be interested in taking it on, but he could put pieces together if we needed that. So my hope is that, like, I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old daughter. So
the last two.
Yeah. So if there's something that they don't see it now, I don't think my daughter my older of the 2 sees that as like, oh, it's not something I want to do the rest of my life. I think once they hit an age where they could see, oh, I could be doing this from home. Oh, I can be my own boss. I can set my own hours. Like, oh, I'd rather do this than, do other jobs or work for somebody else. I think the whole self-employment thing would be more interesting to her. So I can see that being an option in the future. I mean, other than that, I think the kids would, well, I always tease my older boys, like, if you could just marry somebody who really wants to, get into this, I can train them. So there's always that option too. So we're not there yet. And sometimes I think, well, let's just put as much as we can in place to be able to pass it on, whether we sell it or whether we pass it on to one of the kids, or if, God forbid, we died and they have to figure it all out. The more that we have things in place that makes it easier, then the better the handover would be. So it's not someone having to figure out, oh, where are your passwords? Where do you, how do you use a software? So I think anybody's business owner would benefit from just having things in place that would make it easy for somebody else to come on board and learn from.
Jonathan, any input on that?
Yeah, I think obviously we and our distillers we like to scale it a lot more, because once you scale it, we would definitely outsource some of our activities, and that would pivot things much more into the marketing part of the business. But we're not at that stage.
Yeah.
So we did that. That's a difficult point, and that has influenced us as to what we tell our kids to do, and that's why we tell them take the kind of risks that we didn't at your age. Now, of course, they're taking risks that if they fail, it's not as drastic at this point in their life. If we fail, it's difficult for all of our family to go move in someone's couch in their living room, right? Where if they're at this stage, they can easily do this or move to another town. So we are we do see them take risks that we definitely would not have thought of taking when we were their age. But that's also because they're influenced by our experience in being a little more aggressive in taking opportunities and waiting for an employer to tell you what to do. So we're cognizant of that. And so we're hoping that we can pass on something, but at the same time, the children themselves are developing their businesses so quickly that they don't need to look at that. But it would be nice if maybe some of the younger ones would like to take that on. Plus, the customer facing part has to be female, honestly. So I think early on when we started this business, I was trying to write email marketing, like as if I was my old world of project management. And my wife had to tell me, this is a no-go. You don't talk to women like this at all. So I had to unlearn all my business, project management, the way you communicate in the corporate world, out the window. And so she stepped in, and she has become quite the email marketing queen, to be honest. But those are the realities of a business. And we talk about this in front of our kids. The customer really is king. And they may be frustrating. They may be sometimes a little crazy, but at the end of the day, we're still serving them. So we have to think about what they want and then adjust it to what we know can be done. So I think that's kind of an ambiguous answer. Is like, we don't know how big we can get this, and we would like to grow it much bigger. But if there is a piece of advice I give to other people, is that we have had friends or known people where they've taken some pretty crazy risks, and sometimes it blows up. Like they put everything on the line, their house, their mortgage, their marriage even. And we won't take those. We won't take that level of risk. We'll take other risks, but not that kind of risk. So you have to choose wisely the advice you get. Some of that sort of high stake rolling, like put everything on the line, is okay if you're 21, right? What are you going to lose? You're just going to have to move to a new state. But if you have a whole family, that's a little more, you still want to maintain, a marriage. You want to pay attention to your kids. So I think you have to pay attention to the kind of advice you're getting. Somebody who's going to advise a corporation is going to sound very reckless for your family situation. You can't just plunk, a new retail center with $10 million. And if it doesn't work, it's okay, because you got 20 other centers. If you're a family, that might be your last go round. You might write back into an employee mindset, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me, what has set you guys apart from other family businesses is you all through this process, through their teenage years and launching out on their own, you've never hung your hat on one of them taking this over. And there's never been that pressure of, you have to take this over. This is our legacy. This is what we've been building. Your legacy is your kids. Your legacy is the lessons that they've learned along the way.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to the end of the store, whatever happens there is going to end up happening there. But they were free. Correct me if I'm wrong, as they outgrew their roles within the company, or like you guys said, as they got too expensive for you, you just said, we'll supplement it with other designers or other subcontractors and things, rather than say, no, you have to stay here. Is that correct?
Yeah, although I do think they would see the value in continuing it if we were not. Like, I think they see the value in some way or another. A couple of my kids are so used to being able to be kind of a boss. One of them has employees under him, that if he saw the value of, oh, this is a stream of income, it would just be an extra side, income for me if I put people in place to manage it and run it. And they were just
sure.
at the top
Yeah.
making the decisions. I can see them having the ability to do that. A few of the kids,
Yeah, they would not be afraid of doing that.
yeah, rather than like, oh, it's just going to die, and it's
Yeah,
fine
not-
with us
yeah.
if they decide
It wouldn't
to,
just
like,
collapse kind of
it
thing.
won't collapse.
There's value there for anybody to step into.
And if they decide to sell it, we wouldn't. It's not like, a farm or something that you feel like, oh no, this is our land. We've had this for 100 years. But if they decide to sell it, I would say, hey, go for it. Go use the money and use it wisely and do your thing. But yeah.
All right. Again, coming to the end, but I still have so many things I want to talk about. Just talk a little bit about Parent Their Passion. You mentioned it early on in the show, Jonathan. This is another business or another way that you guys are coaching, running seminars. What's that look like?
Yeah, it's basically, this is our passion part that's not really making money yet, but we want to share this with other parents. And we started sharing that with friends. And then we started clarifying our thinking about this because, like I said, a lot of it, we're actually deliberately experimenting. We were self-aware that we were experimenting with our kids in a fun way, nothing dangerous. And that sort of coalesced into this thing that we now call Parent Their Passion. To show you how we evolved in our thinking, in the beginning, I used to call it 10K to town, which means 10,000 hours of practice by the time you graduate. People understand that concept. You got to put the hours in. People understand that for sports, but they don't understand that level of time you need to put into whatever it is you want to become good at. But a coach actually told us that's a bad thing because all the parents are going to think about is all the work. What you want is to focus on the outcome. And it's like, oh yeah, you want your kids to have passion, right? So we call it Parent Their Passion. You're still going to have to put the hours in. And if you do it in the teen years, you can actually rack up quite a bit of hours more easily than you think. So I think that we want to give other parents hope and get excited about their own family situation, because every family is a little bit unique. And if you can look at your family, and of course, if you have a personal business too, that's even more exciting. But if you look at what you have, you can get really excited about it. And each of your children, not just one kid, all of your kids can have a chance to really find their way early on in a way that they're excited about. Because how many guys they're into work and it's like, this is not the work. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to provide for the family.
It's too
but
late
this is
now.
not where I imagine myself being. Right. So what happens if you could start sooner and marry skills with passion? And it is true. You see all the memes out there. You can't live off of passion. That's true. And you can live off of skills, but your heart dies. Well, what happens if you married skill and passion together? But that usually requires you to start sooner and have that runway during the teen years when you're safe to, you have a roof over your head, you've got food, you've got parents who love you no matter if you fail or not. You have the time with the parents, coaching you to develop that so you can marry skill and passion. And so now you have a marketable talent. So I think that I want to give parents hope that instead of being discouraged about where they're going with their teens, so they love them, but sometimes they feel like they're going nowhere with them, that they can actually look within their family and find the resources that they already have. They just don't know they have it. They already have it. And that's what we like teaching parents. It's like how to find those resources that you already have and turn that into something empowering for your kids.
And then we've also documented what we've been doing. So we have so many blog posts and videos. I have videos. I've been embarrassing my older kids lately with posting them where I'm talking to them about a certain part of their talent
when they were young.
And then I zoom into what they're doing today. So from 12 to 23, that transition, and which I'm so glad we did that. We didn't really, I don't know why we did. We just decided to document along the way
with our kids. So.
Yeah. Well, and then just having that whole process. So now when we talk to parents, we've been able to kind of hone in on it. Is a process you can follow to identify that, because it's kind of going from, well, we just got asked that a lot. And that's why another reason why we decided, let's just put this out there, because people would meet our kids and then they ask, well, what did your parents do at home?
They
don't always ask us, they ask the kids that all the time. So I thought, well,
want to hear the truth.
Yeah, exactly. I want to know that we're not doing that. So
Yeah.
that's when we decided, let's try locally now and have just workshops. So we've been putting on workshops, and we're noticing this huge need. The parents are coming in, some with 12-year-olds, some are like 10. Is my son too young? He's 10, but I really want him to get started on this. And then some that are like 16, 17, and the parents like, can you kind of help me out here? And so we are seeing all these different families, but they all are kind of coming with the same problem, or looking for that hope of what can you do with this? Does this work for my family, my situation, or where we, maybe we were just lucky in the way we did it. But so that we have a whole process and pattern that you follow in order to start, just to get started. And parents have to, like, don't think you have to come up with the answer of what your 12-year-old is going to do at 20. It's not like that. It's a pivoting, but just for us to kind of come into this is where our passion would be. If this is a legacy, it's the parent their passion business more than the lotion business of what can we now do to pass on to other parents and our kids as they have kids too. Hopefully they'll see that this is a good pattern that they want to continue on. So for us, that would be something that we would love to see our kids continue in. So that's the succession part.
So what does that look like today? I mean, I'm not local, Northern California, so I can't attend a seminar. So
it's all online too. No, we have it all
is it
online.
a course? Is it as a website, just a collection of blog
we have
posts?
several courses
what's the
online.
plan for that?
Several courses online. You can follow the exercises that go with it, and we're in, I think in every single course, and you and I are in the video too.
Yeah. So
each of those lessons.
Just identifying the talent. So we really target ages 12 to 16, and that is just geared towards teenagers to come on, and then we take them through a video and then
take it by themselves.
Yeah, they take it by themselves.
Okay.
I personally, it's great if the parents could take it separately just to see.
So remember, we do have one that's just for the teens to take if they want to do it by themselves, and then there's another one for the parents to do with the teens. So it's a little more involved, a little more, telling the parents what they can do to help figure that out. So we have that, and we have another one, the blogging to the talent. That's a really fascinating concept.
That's the one that we had started way back, doing short videos, step by step of how a kid can get started just doing a blog, and not even a WordPress blog. We found a site that you can have 10 accounts, super easy. So if you have a 12-year-old that's not techie and you just want them to stay in their little lane and write and follow the prompts that we give them, it develops their talent building. So 40 different videos. I'm in there with my 12-year-old, like I look like a 20-year-old practically now. And it's like years and years ago, but just doing the step-by-step process with the kids. And then the kids know exactly what to act on. And in some of the videos, we're talking to the adults, the parents. So it can be either way, but really the kids or the adults can actually take it from starting a blog with, a certain type of easy software to use. And then sometimes it's like, how are you going to go find what to write about or get better? What do you research in your field of interest and how? And then
it's all based around developing and articulating your focus of what it is your teen's trying to do, right? So it's not a blog about your feelings of the day or random stuff that happened. It's specifically, if you like bicycles but you don't know how that goes into your future, you're going to start writing about it. So in the process of writing about it, one is you're going to develop your vocabulary in that field, but also it's going to help you wrestle with what it is you're really after. So it's that concept of constantly pivoting, thinking about it. So socializing yourself in that space so you can connect with other people who are also, either a little ahead of you, they can give you advice, or you're a little ahead of them. In fact, that's one of the advice I give to people is imagine it's yourself 6 months ago. What would you tell yourself 6 months ago? That's one way to think about it. So those online courses, we have those. They've been there for a while. And we got tons and tons of free videos where I interview people. And we also have an automated newsletter. So
a newsletter is a great place to start. It's free just to get on the newsletter because it is a mindset switch. So just taking it just one piece of writing at a time. And then we weave in stories of, okay, here's an example of how we did it with this particular kid. And, if you have one that's more artistically bent, this is what we did. And if you have one that's more techie or more athletic or however, it's each email that goes out is very specific and kind of helping to understand the mindset.
All right, great. Yeah, we'll definitely link all that down in the show notes. Anything further before we jump into the lightning round here that we haven't covered?
I think just parents should have hope, because it is a hard world to live in, but there are so many resources that, and I think there are a lot of things that parents have that they are good at that can be passed on to kids. I think once kids kind of feel a little bit more confident, or can find one or two things that they really enjoy doing and are good at or want to get better at, just kind of getting the conversation going between parent and kid is just a good start, and it's not too late to start.
I'm going to ask a question about hope. Talk to me about your adult children and appreciation, and just the relationships that you're able to have with them now that they're out of the house, and
I think
give some hope to the parents of teenagers out there.
Well, for one of that I love seeing is how much they help each other out, because they know who is good at what, and there's always a time when one needs help with something, and they go to each other, like, I need help with this. They know who to go to, and they get help. And that, for me as a mom, to see your kids getting along so well because they each have so much respect for each other, is very good. You probably have more to.
I think that's right. I think when they first get out of the home, which is normal, they think that the rest of the world operates the way we do, and every family goes and they go out there. It's kind of like, oh, I don't need to eat healthy, and then after you're like, oh my goodness, I'm becoming, overweight, and I don't feel good just only eating fast food. And then they realize, oh, I guess our way of cooking wasn't so bad after all. So they go through that with the career stuff, and they see friends who were happy when they're in high school, and now they're starting to become discouraged, and they realize, well, oh, it's because they haven't been developing anything of their own, so they feel like they're constantly starting at the bottom, and they make that connection more a few years or 2 or 3 years after they leave home, because they don't make always that connection. Why is my friend always depressed or going through these difficult times? Because it's also a time period when friends are loading themselves up on debt, right? So right now they're having a good time. They're able to go to the beach when our kid is actually putting a night photography session on, because he's passionate about it, but he also needs to work. Whereas the other kids are always available to party, and then the bills come due, and then things turn dark.
And then they're stuck coming back to live at home because they don't have.
A lot of that is happening. And so when they get to about 22, 23, we have noticed they'll call us up and actually say thank you to us for a lot more of that now.
Just have to let go and then see them. And then when they come back, I mean, I even asked each of the kids, okay, tell us about your blogging experience we made you do when you were, 12, 13, 16. And one of them said, I hate to even admit it, Mom, but it was actually so good because I have to write these emails to clients and so on. But they actually all came back giving positive reports about that. So I think now they see, especially because they're comparing where they are compared to what other people their age are doing. And I think they're a lot more grateful. And not to worry about debt is a big one. I think that they're very grateful. They don't have to worry about student debt right now, which, if we were not against having them go on to get a degree after, but we just wanted to make sure they were very intentional if they did choose that route. And none of them have chosen to go that route, and they are in.
Yeah, we have said we both have college degrees, and so we didn't have a bad experience. But honestly, looking back on it, it didn't really do that much for us. So, we give them the reality, because we tell them when you get out, you have go to college if it's going to accelerate you toward your goal, right? So
if
all of them
need
were
the
already more
degree
advanced
to
in
get
the
there,
degree.
yeah,
Exactly. And so we tell them, well, hey, I'll tell you what college is like. There's the fun part of hanging out with friends, but that's not college. That's not the education part. You can hang out with friends now doing exactly that. Having late night parties. You can do that without going to college. The actual college
do what I
part
do.
is you sitting
Enlist in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Enlist in the Marine Corps. You get the dorm experience and none of the debt. So,
so
terrible idea. Do not listen to
that. Yeah, so I think that's what happens with the kids. They, in our experience, has been they do come back after 2-3 years and really put the pieces together and see what they are, where they are now, because they were able to sort of invest.
And they're trying to hire. The funny thing is, they're trying to hire people to work for them and having a really, really hard time finding quality workers. So that's kind of, that's just the day and age that we live in now compared to the past, I think. But knowing that could have been them is kind of nice to know that no, they do work hard.
Hiring employees with the education, but not the
Right.
skills, and that, yeah, I could see it. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for just letting me pick your brain and share it with the audience. I've really appreciated this. You guys ready for the lightning round as we wrap up?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. Who would like to go first on each question?
Can we just answer if you just shoot one out and one of us answers it?
Okay, that's fine.
Then we might both
answer. Coffee or tea, and how do you like it prepared?
Bulletproof coffee for me.
I like mine black with a splash of milk in it. The espresso.
All right. Okay. Pie or cake, and do you have a favorite kind?
Raspberry pie, because our son, the coder, was into Raspberry Pi Day, which was a phenomenon, and our local store had a raspberry/rhubarb pie that would come out around that time, and we would get it for him. It was always a big deal. We'd celebrate because he had his Raspberry Pi, the electronics, and everybody got to enjoy it. And we still have a picture of him eating it. So it was a celebration of him, his talent, and Raspberry Pi just for the fun of it.
I would say the strawberry rhubarb that your mom
and strawberry rhubarb. But it actually had rhubarb in it. So
I'd forgotten about Raspberry Pi. Man, that seems so long ago. You mean you guys have been challenging them this entire time, but what's a common belief among entrepreneurs that you would want to challenge?
I think there are too many that don't pass on what they know and can do onto their kids. And like we said, it's like the earlier you start, the easier it is. It just involve them as much as you can. And it does take time. You have to stop and train or take the time to do it. But it just makes it a lot easier later on. Then when they get good at something that they can turn around and jump in and help you.
Okay. Jonathan, anything different?
Yeah, don't believe that a school can replace you. So I have heard this said, and I think it's true, that if you're successful in your business, you think that the local school you're sending your kids to can be better than you in teaching those skills, and that is not true. Not true at all. So if you hand it off entirely to them, they will migrate back to the average. I really believe that. So they won't understand how you think and how you got to where it is. And they're being taught by people who are lesser people in that area of life. And so I think that creates an unfortunate dichotomy in your kid's mind. So you have to stay in charge.
What's your favorite holiday and why?
I would say Thanksgiving. When we can get all the kids together, now we have a grandson, we have 2 married. When we can get everybody together, that to me, and it's not even that, I think it's just for me, sitting back and watching the siblings talk is so much fun, especially when they reminisce and they bring up things like, we'll just sit there and listen to them talk about how either I or Jonathan dealt with something. It's really, it's a lot of fun.
My brother and I used to torment my mom early on with just the memories that she would have no idea that we had done things.
Yeah.
Or
those come up too.
Yeah, that was fun for us for a couple of years there when we'd first left the house. Now I'm terrified of it myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if my kids retained?
I know.
Do you guys consider yourselves morning people, night people, one of each? And do you have a favorite routine, each of you?
We're definitely morning people. Yeah. We get up really early. And it's a habit we started 5 years ago, maybe?
Like 8 years ago, if you're talking
about. Yeah, going to the gym super early. That
we get there by really 6.
Lifts our mood up a lot.
We get there by 6, which is like 20 minutes away. So we're up early, and then we're home when our daughters are starting to wake up.
Okay. You guys take a class together there, or you just
no, we can't work out
hit
together.
the machines and everything?
We don't. We can work. We can
Secrets of married life. We can be in the same building, but we can't be doing the same class or exercise.
No, we learned that.
Gotcha.
We learned that when we were newly married, but yeah, just our own weight training and whatever routines. Yeah.
Okay. What's one thing that you would want your successor to remember you for?
That we cared. Successor meaning business-wise?
Yeah, not necessarily your kids, because that's a whole different different conversation. But yeah, somebody that took over the business or that watched you or that was alongside that journey with you. And
if that were the case, I would think that we developed something that's, for lack of a better word, humane. It was people friendly. In other words, you could work in this environment and have a life.
Yeah.
So we definitely, made decisions along the way. We could have made different decisions, but it would have been a lot harsher on family and just
some things could have made it
marriage.
easier, and we could have probably grown the business faster, and we would have probably been even more successful. But
at the cost of family life, that would have been hard. So I think we've always been aware of that, and so probably I would say if someone took over our business, that it's kind of baked in to a lot of the things we do. So you'd have to really break the process to make it unfriendly to families.
Yeah. And I think just as another one is just to be relatable with your own customers. I think that's helped me along the way from being a younger mom, selling products that were really, I thought of my customer avatar as being my age. So now it's funny because when people ask, well, how old are your customers? And I'm saying, well, they're like mid-50s on up. I don't know what happened. Like, okay, well, I aged with them. So.
Nice. Where are you guys finding creativity right now?
Toastmasters. We decided to join Toastmasters as a couple a few months ago, and we are having a blast. Yeah. It's just fun. There's so many different people there, all walks of life. Younger people, business owners, retired people, creative people, not so creative people, and just practicing our public speaking, our joke telling, inspirational moments, and that actually has been fun. We do that in the evenings
every week, once a week.
We're addicted to it now.
Yep.
So that is one activity you guys will do together then.
Yeah.
Unlike the gym. So
right.
How long have you guys been doing that one, the Toastmasters?
3 months now.
Yeah, at least.
Okay.
I think we haven't, I missed last night, but we pretty much have made every single meeting for 3 months.
How many times have you guys been on stage?
You were last night. Probably, well, every week you have an opportunity to say something, but as far as giving a speech, you've given 3 and I've given 2.
Not be every single time you are expected to volunteer to joke for a joke of the day, or an inspirational moment or something very small. So a lot of it has to do with just also learning how to get up, shake a hand, just all the social graces that go with being in a public environment. And there's so much camaraderie, and you get dinged if you say too many ahs and filler words, which is half the fun.
All right, great. Last question. What's one thing that you've got coming up in the next year or so that's got you really excited about the future?
I think we're still navigating the local moms and dads of teens and opportunities there with our workshops. That's still because that's kind of new doing it local. We've been doing that online, but not really locally. So I think kind of navigating that and trying to figure out where people are at and what their needs are. We feel like we have the answer for them, but seeing where they are and noticing whether or not it's something they can see the value of we're trying to, like, in the past, it would have been more frustrating and like, come on, this is what the thing, you just got to try it. And now it's more like, okay, we'll just have to listen in on these conversations, see where people are at, let them out, like you ask the questions, and try to figure out how to show people. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but it's also very stimulating to see what people are talking about too. So yeah.
After 15 years of serving one type of customer, now you've got a different one that you've got to listen to and find out what they value. So are those, is that a one-time seminar? Is it a weekly course? What's that look like locally for you guys? Once a month, once a quarter?
Well, no, the online courses are self-contained, so you can sign up and do that anytime. So we're not doing it live. It's pre-recorded. And there are exercises that go with it. And I have it on a website that allows you to it keeps track and notifies me when people complete it. So that's taken
Specifically
care of.
the in-person ones. Are you guys doing them
No,
every
that's
week
what
at
we're
different
trying to. Yeah.
locations?
So what we're doing is putting on little mini seminars, introducing the idea of how they can get started, and that's where in the discovery phase. So as we're doing this, we're also listening to people tell us where their pain points are and what they're trying to do. So there's curiosity, but we're not really sure how and if it will translate into action if they want to go to the next level.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to figure out.
Because ideally, like, for example, in the summertime when kids are out of school, you have two options. Either they're already packed with activities because it's the summertime or they're doing vacation. What we would see it as is, no, it's ideal. School's out. You have time. You need to fill that time with something that could be productive. So might as well come and find out from us how to navigate building those talents so that by the time school does start up again, you have a mindset that, okay, if I'm assigned an English essay, you have to do an English essay. Why don't you, if you're not homeschooled, why don't you talk to your teacher about, like, oh, this is what I've learned over the summer. Can I do my essay on that? Because I know that you want me to cover all these different research topic types of research. I can do that. So if it's a mindset switch that we can get the kids going on, or just starting their talent building during the summer, that's how I would see it as being ideal. So that's the part about the discovery phase that
we honestly don't know. And people come from very different walks of life.
We keep thinking everybody does things the way we do it. And then we realize, nope, that's not true.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Awesome.
So,
all right. Well, this is the chance to tell people where they can go to find out more information. So go ahead and let everybody know.
I'd be parenttheirpassion.com. So there's two T's next to each other, Parent Their Passion. And then the same for Instagram and Facebook. We like to post what our kids are doing. It's fun to watch what our adult kids post because it's usually in their field that they're working in. So if my daughter's doing something and she's illustrating something, she makes a little video how she illustrated this, put it together, then I'll usually share that and say, okay, this is what your 23-year-old could do. But guess what? When she was 12, this is what she was doing. So trying to we have one of our sons is a machinist. So he's got lots of videos of his work in his machinist environment. And so just being able to share that, Instagram would be enough of a good place to start with following and seeing what the results could look like.
And you can email me directly. I do read my email all the time and I will reply. It's Jonathan@parenttheirpassion.com. So Jonathan is JONATHAN @parenttheirpassion.com. And if you have a question, ask me. Also, if you go to our website and you just put your email right on that main page, you'll get a free download, which is like a self-discovery process. So you can get a taste of the basic concept of how you can get started. So you can just take a piece of what we do and still get results. Of course, if you try a lot of the tips that we've tried, and it's going to be much easier to get there faster. But you can do just blogging, for example, nothing else, and that's going to make a big difference.
And to come back to our e-commerce side, back to the farmer's market origin, that's hardlotion.com. So dry, cracked skin, lotion bars. It's hardlotion.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this. I've really appreciated this conversation. Got a lot longer than normal episodes, but I think the listeners will get a lot of value from this. So I just want to thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. I hope that you've enjoyed my conversation with Jonathan and Renee Harris as much as I have. We have new episodes twice a month on The Art of Succession, interviewing business owners with their own succession stories. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find the interview form linked down in the description below. If this has been a helpful conversation for you, I would ask that you please share it with another parent who would benefit from this. And I want to thank you for watching The Art of Succession.